Now that we live in a time where the only thing that separates you from any song you could want to play is a tap on the touchscreen, revolutionary devices like MP3 players and early iPods are outdated, CDs are a distant memory, and prior medias like vinyl records would have been totally forgotten if not for the youngest generation's obsession with authentic vintage. However, this does leave one key audio technology of the 20th century forgotten: audio cassette tapes. Welcome to the 5th episode of Retro Tech, the show in which we take a look at the legacies of various tech or break down events relating to tech from history. I'm your host, VexOr, and join me as we cover the story of the Sony Walkman. Audio cassette tapes first hit the vinyl-dominated market in the mid-1960s. Unlike their predecessors, cassette tapes were more durable and far cheaper, though the sound quality of a cassette was arguably slightly worse than that of their competitors at the time. Built-in car cassette players made them convenient for car rides, but ultimately, vinyl still dominated in the home. As a result, vinyl would vastly outperform the audio cassette. That was until the invention of the Sony Walkman, a revolutionary new audio cassette player with a focus on portability that would forever change the way that music was listened to. It was 1979, and for the first time, music buffs could listen to what they wanted, wherever they wanted, as long as they had a fresh pack of batteries and a pair of headphones. In contrast to the large phonographs and stereo turntables of the past, the pocket-sized Sony Walkman could be easily transported. By the end of 1979, audio cassettes had exploded in popularity and would be one of the defining technologies of the 1980s. As legend has it, the Walkman was created in the first place as a special request for Sony's co-founder, Masaru Ibuka. Ibuka was a music lover who traveled frequently. He had planned to travel on a long flight, but wanted to be able to listen to his favorite cassette without the bulky playback device that was standard for the time. Sony would quickly capitalize on the rudimentary portable cassette player, and the first Walkman would hit the market less than 6 months later, available just before the start of summer vacation for students. Once customers had an opportunity to try out the Walkman, priced at $150 American, it became a massive hit. This was helped by an innovative consumer marketing campaign in which Sony representatives directly approached pedestrians on the streets and gave them a chance to listen to the Walkman for themselves. The purely rectangular design was simple, with only a few added decorative details, and the blue anodized casing resonated well with the youth. The 14-ounce design felt sturdy and was made from aluminum. It would go on to sell 50,000 units in the first 2 months alone. Listeners loved being able to listen to their music on demand, but more importantly, they could listen to their music without interrupting their daily lives. Because of its size, you could throw your Walkman in your pocket on your morning run, and unlike boomboxes and stereo systems, its headphones afforded the privacy of listening to your music anywhere without disturbing others. When Sony released the first Walkmans, they featured 2 headphone jacks and a hotline switch. When pressed, this button activated a microphone and lowered the volume to enable those listening to have a conversation without removing their headphones. Sony's chairman, AKIO MORITA, would later add these features to the design for fear the technology would be isolating. Though he thought it would be considered rude for one person to be listening to his or her own music in isolation, people bought their own units rather than share, and these features would be removed for later models. The Sony Walkman's sheer innovation and high level of convenience maintained the device's popularity well into the 1990s. However, the rise of CDs would lead Sony to create a similar device for them, which we may cover on a future video. For years, the Walkman and Discman peacefully coexisted as mega giants dominating consumer electronics. But by the turn of the century, audio cassettes on the whole had unfortunately begun to fall out of mainstream use in favor of newer technologies. Despite its inevitable fall, Sony has still sold over 400 million portable players total since its 1979 release. It's remained largely due to effective advertisement, a symbol of the freedom and portability that Sony sought to convey among the younger demographic. But it wasn't only the younger generation that owned a Sony Walkman. Due to its extensive presence in 80s pop culture, people of all ages, from beachgoers to astronauts, were using the Walkman as a part of their daily lives. It was famously featured in movies such as James Bond, A View to Kill, Terminator, and Back to the Future, which would ultimately expand its reach and secure its place as an icon of the 80s and for years to come. Secondhand music and Walkman overspill also became a way of life on public transport. By 1982, Time magazine was hailing the Walkman as the gadget of the year. By 1984, Sony had cranked out 10 million units, which climbed to 30 million by 1987. Within the decade, there were more than 50 million, about half of them worn in the United States alone. Though the Walkman may not be as quickly recognized by younger generations, its impact on music and consumer electronics is impossible to ignore. The Walkman was a trailblazer. It took music out of the home and put it into the hands of the listener, who now had complete control over what they wanted to hear. The Walkman paved the way for portable CD players, MP3 players, and even modern music streaming services. Still, the Walkman's most important contribution is not its technological advances by any means. Unlike its successors, the Sony Walkman first created the idea that music listening was a personal experience, and that this personal experience was not just for fun, but ultimately an essential aspect of our very identity. Thank you very much for watching, and have a fantastic rest of your day.